Hello, in this video, I'll show you how to use AWS GameLift as a dedicated server for a multiplayer game made with Unreal Engine. Before you begin, you will need to have a GitHub and an Epic Games account. When you have the accounts, go to epicgames.com and sign in. Then navigate to the account settings page. Select the Apps and Accounts menu on the left and connect your GitHub account. The reason why we need to do this is because we will need to have access to the Unreal Engine source code on GitHub. The engine that you get through the Epic Games launcher will not allow us to create the server build which is needed for multiplayer. If we look at the documentation, you can see that one of the requirements is using the Unreal Engine source build from GitHub. Once your account is linked, it will take a couple of days for the Epic Games team to invite you to the GitHub organization. When you receive the invitation, click on it and join the organization. Once you are in the Epic Games organization, go to github.com/epicgames/Unreal Engine. If you can see the project files, it means you have done everything correctly. Now we need to download it. One way to do this is to use the GitHub desktop app. Go to desktop.github.com. Download the GitHub desktop app and install it. When it is installed, launch it and you should see something like this. Sign in with your GitHub account. Go to File, and then select Options. Once you are in, search for Unreal Engine in the search bar. Select the one with Epic Games/Unreal Engine and click on the Clone button. Alternatively, you can go to github.com/epicgames/Unreal Engine. Click on the code button and copy the URL. Then on the GitHub desktop app, go to File and select Clone Repository. Select the URL option and paste the URL you copied. Click Clone to download the files. Make sure you have at least 200 gigabytes of space. When it is finished, you should see something like this. Now we need to install Visual Studio. Go to visualstudio.microsoft.com/downloads. When the download is complete, locate and launch the installer. Select Universal Windows Platform Development, Desktop Development with C++, Mobile Development with C++, and Game Development with C++. Click Install when you're done. When the installation is complete, go back to the GitHub desktop app and click on Show in Explorer. This will open the project in the File Explorer. Launch the Setup task. When that's done, execute the Generate Project Files task. When the files are generated, you should see a file called UE5. Open it with Visual Studio. Select Development Editor from the drop-down and make sure the environment is set to the system you're using. Now expand the engine folder and set the UE5 project as the startup project. Right-click on it again and build it. Keep in mind that this will take a long time to complete, and it is normal. When the build is finished, launch the project and wait for it to open. When that's done, you should get an Unreal Editor window. In order for your Unreal Engine game to work with GameLift, we will need to add the GameLift SDK to it. Go to aws.amazon.com/GameLift/getting-started. Scroll down and look for Amazon GameLift Managed Server SDK. In the description, you should see that it works for Unreal Engine. Click on Download Now. When the download is completed, locate the folder and extract it. Go into the folder and keep going until you see a bunch of them. The ones we want is the GameLift C++ Server SDK and the GameLift Unreal plugin. Move them to the desktop. Make sure you do this part because you will get an error if the path to the SDK is too long when we create the build files. Now we need to install OpenSSL. If we go into the GameLift C++ Server SDK folder, there will be a README file. Open it and you should see the instructions to install it. Copy the URL and paste it in the browser. For Windows, it'll be this one. Click on the link to the right, and you'll be directed to another page. Scroll down and download the installer for your system. When that's done, launch the installer. Read and accept the agreement if it's okay with you, and click Next. Remember this path because we'll need it. Then proceed to install OpenSSL. If we go back to the instructions in the README file, we need to add a couple of system environment variables. In the search bar at the bottom, search for environment and select Edit the System Environment Variables menu. Click on Environment Variables. In the System Variables section, click on New to add a new variable. For the name, put OpenSSL _ include _ dir in all caps. For the value, navigate to where you install OpenSSL. Then click on the Include folder. Click on the address bar to get the path and use it for the value for the environment variable. We'll need 2 more, so click on New again. For the name, put OpenSSL _ libraries. Go back to the OpenSSL folder. Click on lib and use the path for the value. For the last variable, click on New again and use OpenSSL _ root _ dir for the name. The value will be the path to the OpenSSL folder. The next step in the README file is to install Python. Open your browser and go to python.org/downloads. Click on the download button. When that's done, locate and launch the installer. I already have it installed, so I'll skip this. But if you do not have it, pause the video and come back when you install Python. Now we need to make sure we have CMake and MS-build binaries in our system path. In the search bar, search for environment and select Edit System Environment Variables. Click on Environment Variables. In the System Variables section, locate the path variable and click on it. For CMake, it should be included with Visual Studio. In the search bar, search for Visual Studio. Right-click on Visual Studio and select Open File Location. Right-click on the shortcut for Visual Studio and select Open File Location as well. Click on Community in the address bar to navigate to it. CMake should be in Common 7, IDE, Common Extensions, Microsoft, CMake, CMake again, and bin. Click on the address bar and copy the path. Go back to the Environment Variables window and click on New to add the path to CMake. For MS Build, go back to the CMake folder and click on Community to navigate to it. Go inside MS Build, Current, and Bin. Click on the address bar and copy the path. Go back to the Environment Variables window and add it to the path. Now navigate to the GameLift CPP Server SDK folder. Click on the address bar and type cmd. Press the Enter key to launch the command prompt. From the README file, we need to run a few commands. Run the first one, which creates a folder called out. Then use the second command to navigate into it from the command prompt. For the next one, scroll down until you see the CMake option for Unreal. Copy the build for Unreal part and paste it just before the double periods of the Visual Studio command. Copy the whole command and execute it from the command prompt. When that's done, copy the MS build command and run it. Keep in mind that this will take some time to complete. When the build is successful, go back to the out directory in the GameLift CPP Server SDK folder. Click on Prefix and go into bin. Copy the DLL file and navigate to the GameLift Unreal plugin folder. Click on GameLift Server SDK, Third Party, GameLift Server SDK, Win64, and paste the DLL file inside. Now go back to the prefix folder. Click on lib and copy the lib file. Navigate back to the Win64 folder in the plugin directory and paste the lib file inside. This completes the GameLift Server SDK plugin. The next step is to add it to the project. Open the GitHub desktop app. Make sure you have Unreal Engine selected and commit the changes. Click on Show in Explorer to open the project in the File Explorer. Click on Engine and go into Binaries. Then locate the executable for the Unreal Engine editor for your system and launch it. For Windows, it is in the Win64 folder, and the executable is called Unreal Editor. Once the editor is open, create a third-person C++ project. it should open Visual Studio. The next step is to create the server target build file for the project. Close Visual Studio and navigate to the directory of the project. Click on Source and make a copy of the editor.target file. Rename the file by changing editor to server and remove everything after target. Open the file in the text editor then replace editor with server in the class name. Do the same to the constructor. For target type.editor, change it to target type.server. Save the changes and close it. Go back to the root directory of the project. Create a folder called Plugins. Then put the GameLift plugin files inside it. Right-click on the Unreal Engine project file and select Generate Visual Studio Project Files. Now open the Visual Studio project file with Visual Studio. Make sure you have Developer Editor selected and launch the app. Once the editor is open, we need to configure some project settings. Click on Edit and select Project Settings. Under Projects, click on Maps and Modes. For the editor startup map, make sure to select the third-person map. For the game default map, also select the third-person map. Expand the Advanced Settings menu. For server default map, use the third-person map as well. Now click on Packaging under Project, expand the Advanced Settings menu, and look for List of maps to include in package build. Add one item. Then add the third-person map by browsing for it. That's all for the project settings. For the next step, we need to make sure the GameLift SDK plugin is installed. Click on Edit and select Plugins. Search for GameLift and make sure the SDK is installed. Once the plugin is installed, we need to add some GameLift code to start handling incoming connections when it is launched. Close the Unreal Editor. In Visual Studio, open your game's build file. Then add the GameLift Server SDK module to your app. On the next line, enable exceptions as well. For the next step, open the game mode header file for your project. The code we will need can be found in the official documentation from Amazon. Scroll down to the header file code snippet and copy the protected and private section of the code. Go back to your game mode's header file in Visual Studio and paste it at the bottom of the class. Go back to the documentation, copy the include statement for the GameLift Server SDK and the log statement as well. Go back to your game mode's header file and paste it under the last include statement. Remove the extra include statement from the documentation and move the GameLift Server SDK above the last include statement. Now go into the game mode C++ file. Then go back to the documentation. Scroll down to the function's definition and copy everything from begin play to init GameLift. Go back to Visual Studio and paste it at the bottom of the C++ file. Now replace the class name from the documentation with your game mode's name. The last thing we'll need in the documentation is the log statement at the top. Copy it and paste it at the top of your game mode. Now launch the app. Now we can proceed to create the server build. Click on the Platforms button. Select the platform you're using and make sure the target is the server one. If you do not see this, it means you did not create the server target build file correctly, or you did not generate the Visual Studio project files. Click Package Project. Create a folder to store the package files. And select it to start the build process. Once the build finishes, navigate to the directory of the package files. Before we can upload this to GameLift, we need to create an install file for GameLift to execute. Open up Notepad. The executable we want it to run is in the engine directory, extras, read this, en-us, and the prereq executable. Right-click on it and copy as path. Paste it inside the notepad. Remove the quotes. Then remove everything before engine. Since GameLift will look for the path relative to its directory, we need to start from the engine folder. After the path, put these options. When that's done, click on File and select Save As. Name it install.bat and select all files for the type. Then make sure to save it at the root directory of the package files. The next thing we'll need is to add 2 OpenSSL files into our build. Navigate to where you install OpenSSL. Copy the crypto and SSL files. Then paste them inside the root directory of the server build. Now this is ready for GameLift. The next step is to use the AWS command line tool to upload it to GameLift. Go to docs.amazon.com/latest/user guide. Click on Get Started and click on Install/Update. Scroll down and select the system you're using. Download and install the command line tool. I already have this, so I will skip this part. When you have it installed, run the version command from the instructions inside the command prompt to confirm you have done it correctly. When that's done, navigate to the login page of AWS and sign in. If you do not have an account, create one. Once you're in, search for IAM in the search bar and select it in the menu. Click on Users under Access Management. Then add a user by clicking on the Add Users button. Give the user a name. Click Next. Select Attach Policies directly and search for GameLift in the search bar at the bottom. Select the Amazon GameLift Full Access policy and click Next. Review the information and click Create User. Click on the user you created and select Security Credentials. Scroll down until you find the Access Keys section. Click on Create Access Key. We want to use the command line interface, so we'll select that. Scroll down and confirm the action. Then click Next. Click Create Access Key to complete the process. When you have the key and secret, open the command prompt. Run AWS configure. Copy the access key and paste it in. Press Enter for the next step. For the secret, it is in the console. Click Show and use that. Press Enter and complete the steps. This will allow us to execute GameLift commands on the computer. To upload the server build, use this command. For the name, we can put anything we want. The server SDK version is the one you are using. For me, it is 5.0.4. The build root refers to the root directory of the package server files. For the build version, we can put 1. Now run this command in the command prompt. When that's done, we should be able to see it in the GameLift console. Go back to the AWS console on the browser. Search for GameLift and select it in the menu. Click on Builds and it should be there. Click on the build ID. Then click on Create Fleet. Leave Manage EC2 selected and click Next. Give the fleet a name. Scroll down and click Next. We can leave the region as the default and click Next. For the instance type, select the one that you want to use and click Next. For the launch path, we need to specify the location of the server executable. Navigate to the root directory of the server build. Click on the folder with the name of your project. Then go to Binaries and Win64. Scroll until you see the server executable. Right-click on it and copy as path. Open in Notepad and paste it inside. Remove the quotes. Since the path is relative to GameLift, we can remove everything starting from Windows Server. Copy the path and paste that into the launch path text box. Scroll down to the EC2 port settings section and expand it. In order for people to join the server, we need to specify the IPs that can join. Click on Add Port Settings. Select Custom UDP for the type. The port will be 7777. And the IP address will be 0.0.0.0/0. This will allow anyone to join. Click Next to go to the next page. Then click Next again. Review the information and click Submit. The process can take a long time, but we can track the progress by going to the Events tab and refreshing it periodically. When the state of the fleet turns active, click on the Details tab and make sure the status is active. Now that the server is up and running, we can test this. Open the command prompt and run this command. For the fleet ID, go back to the GameLift console and copy the fleet ID. Paste it after the fleet ID parameter. For the location, put the region for your fleet. The command will give us some information. The one we want is the IP address. Copy it, and then go to the Unreal editor. Click on the 3 vertical dots button and change the number of players to 2. Make sure the net mode is Play Standalone. If you run the app, there should be 2 games running. To join the game session, we can use the Open command from Unreal Engine. Press the tilde key to open the terminal. It is the key under the Escape key and left of the 1 key. In the input box, type Open to prepare the command. Then put the IP for the fleet. If you press Enter, you should see a blink for a second. This means that we are transported to the server. On the other game client, run the Open command as well. As you can see, we have 2 games connected to the server. That's all for this video. If you find this helpful, give the video a like, share, and subscribe to support the channel.